Hi friend, welcome back. So today we are talking about how to get into real estate if you are a complete beginner, basically how to buy your first house. I personally got into real estate when I was 24 years old, single as a pringle, and making about $16 an hour. So I'm here to tell you that if you have your age, your wage, your relationship status, or any other issue that you feel is holding you back from real estate, those things are not true. Like, you can get around those hurdles, and I'm gonna give you the tips and the tricks on how you can do that today in this video. So if you're new here, my name is Rebecca, and on this channel we focus on building wealth and being able to pursue our dreams without a traditional job tying us down. So there's a lot of different aspects that go into that, and in my personal opinion, real estate can be a very large aspect of building wealth. It can be super important, and so that's what we are covering today. As you know, it's really important to understand that real estate is one of those things that can make you or it can break you. And so we also are going to be going over some do's and don'ts that are really, really important in real estate, and you're going to be wildly benefited by your real estate. You're not going to be harmed by it as long as you do it the right way. The other thing that I'm going to go over in this video is if you should get into real estate in today's economy with interest rates being high. And I'm just going to tell you right now from the outset, if it was me, if I was starting over today and I had to make the decision, I absolutely would purchase a house in today's economy, even with these crazy interest rates. And I'm going to get into why I would do that, and I'm going to talk about how to do it correctly so it doesn't harm you. And we're going to get into all of that today. So if you're interested in it, be sure to stick around. Maybe hit the subscribe button if you are interested in these type of things. Also, as a quick disclaimer, I'm not an expert or a professional. I'm not a real estate agent, and so this content is meant for educational purposes only. If you need serious advice on these things, please do speak to a professional. I will give my opinion and I will give what I would personally do, but that does not mean that it is professional advice. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and let's jump right into how to get started in real estate as a complete beginner and how to buy your first house. Okay, so number one is going to be do get started as soon as possible. So it's important to get started in real estate as soon as you can, as long as you meet some criteria that we're going to be going through in these do's and don'ts. And the reason why it's so important to get started as soon as possible is because time is really of the essence with real estate. Now, I'm never going to say that it's too late to get started, but the earlier that you get started, the better. And that is as long as you're doing it safely with the correct parameters in place. Okay, so that's going to bring me to point number 2. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. And so I've seen a lot of people, a lot of my lovely friends who I wish the best for, but they have chosen to wait, trying to get things to be perfect before they buy. And things are just never going to be perfect. The economy could be great at some point, but it's never going to be perfect. Your life can be great at some point, but it's never going to be perfect. And I know if you were ever in a decent position to buy and then you chose not to because you were waiting for things to get better, then you're most likely going to regret that at some point. Like I said before, time is of the essence. And just don't expect things to be perfect. You're going to check off boxes to meet criteria to make sure that you're set, but everything else except for those boxes does not have to be perfect. So number 3 is do give yourself a goal and push yourself to achieve it. So getting started in real estate as a beginner is, I think, the hardest step that you're ever going to face. Once you get past the starting point, everything else will most likely be easier from there on out, as long as you have done the right things to set you up for success, basically. But you need to realize that it's not going to be an easy process to get started, and so you have to kind of sacrifice sometimes to push through that initial startup. You're going to have to give yourself a goal, and you're going to have to push yourself to do it, and we're going to talk about how to do that in number 6. But I want you for now to realize that once you hit that goal, it's going to be a lot easier. And so it's important to just kind of push yourself at the beginning, because It's the hardest part, and I feel like I've seen a lot of people like push it off just because it's so challenging at the beginning to get into it. Obviously not for everybody, but for some people it's very scary. It's a scary step, it's a difficult step to start, to save up the money that's needed, to go through all the research and everything that's needed. It's difficult, but you just have to push yourself through that first part, and then things will get easier. Number 4 is going to be don't purchase anything outside of your price range. And of course this sounds pretty obvious, but you would be surprised. I promise you the temptation will arise. Hands down, 100% of the time, I'm pretty sure it will arise. So you want to make sure that your monthly mortgage payment that you're going to sign up for is not going to be more than 25% of your monthly take-home pay. So that's after taxes, your net pay, what actually comes into your bank. You do not want to be spending more than 25% of that on your mortgage, because if you do, you're going to be house poor, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to handle home ownership at that point. For now, it's important that you understand that purchasing outside of your price range can easily set you up for failure. And like I said, it's very tempting, but just don't do it. So remember how I said earlier that real estate can make you or break you? It's really, really true, and this is one of the places where that comes out. Because if you purchase outside of your healthy price range, you are basically going to set yourself up for a higher risk of foreclosure or short sale if something happens and you just can't meet the bills because the bills are too big. And so that's really going to mess with your financial well-being if one of those things ends up happening. You're going to take a lot of steps backwards instead of forwards, and even mentally and emotionally, that's a very traumatic thing to go through. So we don't want to put ourselves at a higher risk for those things, obviously. So the best thing to do is to stay below that 25% of our take-home pay, and we will be in a much better shape. So even though you might get approved for a higher loan, you might get approved, your realtor might show you some beautiful house that's very tempting, please remember this point, that it's very important for your long-term success. And we're going to be getting into this more later, but you can always upgrade. So the point is that you're starting as soon as possible, and you're starting at a healthy price point, and then it will not take too much time before you can easily and healthily upgrade to a bigger house. So we don't want to rush into it and cause ourselves a foreclosure or a short sale when we could easily just start with a smaller house, be patient, and then upgrade easily later. So number 5 is going to be don't count yourself out because of your age, your wage, your relationship status, or any other setback or excuse. And I don't want to be mean by calling it an excuse, but I did go there. And that's because those challenges, they are very valid. They would slow you down. They would make it more difficult. But this video is mainly for those type of people. If you feel like you have a setback, you have a challenge, you have something that would cause you to not be able to move forward in real estate, that would make it so much more difficult for you. This is literally for you, because I felt like that was where I was, being young, dumb, not having any money. I had debt. As a single person making $16 an hour, that's not very much money that leaves you with to be able to buy a home. But I'm still here to tell you the truth and to show you how you can do it regardless of those things. So even with the odds stacked against you, you can do it. Just don't count yourself out because of these or any other reasons. And in number 7, we're going to get deeper into how you can overcome these challenges and how you can make it work even when the odds are stacked against you. Number 6, do push yourself to your limits for a short term. And so this section is not for everybody, okay? This is for specifically those people out there who feel like the odds are literally stacked against you. You've got these challenges and these issues that make you feel like it's going to be almost impossible for you to be able to start in real estate or to buy your first house. And so this isn't for you who feel like it's going to be easy enough for you to buy real estate. It's not a problem. If that's you, we are happy for you. That's wonderful, but this section isn't for you. You can go ahead and skip on to number 8. But for those of us who do feel like the odds are stacked against us, this is for us. This is for you. Maybe you feel like you have too many kids, you have not enough income, you're not married, or your partner left you, maybe you feel you're too young or you're too old, you have a disability, or anything else that feels like it's stopping you from buying real estate, this one is for you, and I want to encourage you. When the odds are stacked against you, you have to push yourself to your limits for a season of time, but this is not for the long term. So piling up tons of money is what we have to do. We have to work tons of overtime, and we have to cut back to the bare bones of what we typically spend money on day to day. I know this is not what everybody wants to hear, but this is what's going to help you to make a larger down payment even when you have the odds stacked against you. And when you make a larger down payment, that's going to allow you to buy more house for a smaller monthly budget. So for a smaller monthly mortgage payment, you can still get the size of house that you want or you need. That is the strategy that I used. So let me break that down one more time for you. You've got to make as much money as humanly possible for you. You've got to get side hustles. You have to do overtime, as much overtime as you can get, and you've got to spend as little money as possible during this time. And again, this is a short time. We're not doing this long term. That's not possible. It's not healthy. In my personal opinion, I would never tell anybody to do it long term. And when I say short term, what I'm thinking is 6 months to 2 years. That is the time frame that I think is okay and healthy personally, but obviously that could be subjective to each person. When I did this, I promise you, I was working so much overtime that I do not remember this year of my life. I cut back on so much spending. The nails had to go, the hair color had to go, the buying clothes and shoes that were not necessary had to go, the yoga studio had to go. So anyways, everything had to go. And I still gave myself a certain budget to spend money on those things that I needed, even a little bit of, fun stuff, self-care, but it was a much smaller amount than it had previously been. And this is what I'm talking about, okay? Yeah, it was definitely a sacrifice, but I will tell you now that I don't regret that at all, because I set myself up for future success, and I'm really glad that I did that. 10 out of 10 recommend. It was a little hard, it was a little challenging, I did sacrifice, but it was worth it, and that's why we have to have a plan. So before we leave this point, I want to give a quick caveat, and this is also why you have to know your price range, because most people during the home buying process get tempted to buy more house than they can afford because they've really been pushing themselves and making more money. So for example, if you typically make $4,000 and then with your overtime and your side hustles, now you're making $6,000 or $7,000 a month, then the loan officer is most likely going to offer you more house. He's going to give you a bigger mortgage to work with. But you don't want to do this, because what you're going to do is you're going to sign yourself up for something that is going to force you to continue to work like a maniac and never buy yourself anything. You're never going to have money for clothes or shoes or hair or nails, and you're going to be house poor and you're going to be sad. And then it will be very hard to maintain that long term, in all seriousness. So you want to buy a house that's in your normal monthly salary range. Even though you're making $6,000 or $7,000 now, if your normal income is $4,000, then you want your monthly mortgage to be $1,000 or less. You don't want to lock yourself into a 15-year or 30-year mortgage that relies upon you working 70 hours a week, because it's just not realistic or healthy. Even if you think you could push yourself to your limits long term, I would never recommend it, because I think you'd be setting yourself up for failure, or even worse, like health issues or something. Like I said, 6 months, maybe 2 years max, you're going to pile up more for your down payment, and that's going to give you the resources that you need for a decent sized house, but on a smaller monthly payment that fits in your budget. But you can push yourself to your limits for a short term, and that's the point here. It's hard, but it's worth it to make the initial purchase of the house. Okay, so number 7 is going to be, don't try to time the market. You want to time your finances instead. So don't wait for prices to come down, because they probably never will. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some people can predict it. I certainly cannot. I just don't think it's wise to try to time the market, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot. You're going to be pushing it off until you see it go down, but in reality, it may never, ever, ever go down. So that can sound sad, but it might be the reality, and it might be a leg up for you to know. Like I said earlier, you just need to get started as soon as you can with your finances being in order. So you're timing your finances. When your finances are in order, you go for it. Now, I do want to be careful with this because there could be a housing bubble in your particular area. From what I know, there is no bubble in America in general right now. So again, like I said, I'm not an expert, I'm not a real estate agent, but from my own research and what I believe to be true, there's no housing bubble in America right now, but there could be one in your area. There are some going on, I think, here and there. So you might want to talk to a professional, somebody who knows, a real estate agent in your area, to just make sure before you purchase. But you can certainly still be preparing even if the market's not there yet. You want to be preparing so you're ready to go as soon as the market is good to go in your area. The longer you wait for prices to come down, the more I think that you'll be hurting yourself. If you jump in now, that's going to help you to build equity, and building equity is really, really going to help you to be able to grow and build over time, like we talked about a little bit earlier, but we're going to talk about it more in number 10. So secondly, you don't want to wait for interest rates to come down either. And this one I know is controversial, but it is my opinion. It's what I would do if I was starting over. When I bought a house, I was not concerned about the interest rates. I was not concerned about the prices. I just knew that I wanted to get into the market because I knew about equity building, and I knew that the prices were going to continue to rise and rise. And the other important thing that goes into this is refinancing. If the interest rates ever do come down, then you will certainly have the opportunity to refinance and bring your interest rate down. So why wait while the houses continue to get more expensive when you can just refinance anytime you want? That's the way I see it. So I'd rather jump in and then refinance if I have to. Now, you do have to be prepared for refinancing because it does cost some money, but it's usually going to be worth it. So you need to make sure you're talking to probably your loan officer, somebody that you trust that knows what they're doing, and they're going to give you the advice on when that's the right time to do that. But yeah, like I said, this is what I would do today, and this is exactly what I did do when I initially got started in real estate, buying my first home. I bought it when I was ready to, not when the market seemed ideal. And then I actually did refinance to get a better rate once the interest rates did drop. All right, so number 8 is going to be, do get a conventional mortgage. Don't get any weird stuff. You don't want to be doing rent to own. You don't want anything that's going to balloon on you. Now, I don't even know if those two options are even legal anymore. I don't think so. But I do hear people talking about renting to own all the time, and I'm like, what? Don't do that. Just don't. It's not smart. And I don't really have time to get into all the details on these right now, but I'm gonna pop on the screen all the different kinds of mortgages that are available right now. I'm gonna pop them on the screen while I tell you why I would still go with a normal conventional mortgage. And the reason is because either way you slice it, the normal conventional mortgage is going to give you less risk, and that is going to set you up for a greater chance of success. And that's what we're going for, especially as a first-time home buyer. You need to understand, like I said at the beginning, that real estate can make you or break you. It really can. And so we need to focus on setting ourselves up for success. So when you're choosing to not do some of these loans, it might mean that you have to work a little harder to get started in real estate, to buy your first house. And I was looking into some of these different ones as when I was getting started because they seem a little easier. But my dad is an experienced realtor. He's been in the business for about 30 years. And he taught me that you always want to go with a conventional mortgage. And while it did mean more work for me to get started, I'm very grateful in the end for his advice and that I followed it, because it saved me a lot of potential headache and heartache in the end, because of all the risk that does get added on to the other mortgages and options, and you don't realize it starting out. So that's why I'm here to tell you. My dad told me, and I was grateful for that, and I want to pass that on. So like I said, I don't have time to go over all of these types of loans today, but if you're interested in hearing more about them and why I don't recommend them and all of that, please let me know in the comments below, and I will try to get a video made on more of that. Each of the other types of loans do have various risk factors, such as unpredictability, not being insured, and having less equity starting out. And equity is in and of itself like a built-in insurance. But number 9 is going to be, don't get a fixer-upper for your first house. I was really tempted, like really interested in getting a fixer-upper for my first house. Again, I think that my dad told me not to do that, and I'm really glad that I didn't, looking back, because I really, really see now what a lot of other experienced people say is true, that you should get your feet wet in real estate first with a starter house, because there's so much that goes into caring for a normal house and getting used to the mortgage payments and the fixes and everything. There's just a lot that goes into it, and I'm not trying to scare anybody, because it's a wonderful thing to own your own house, but you don't want to add on top of those things that you're going to be learning additional risk and like burden of having to fix a house. And you really just don't want to set yourself up for failure. Once again, you want to start slow and build, and real estate is a thing where you can do that. You can start slow and you can learn and you can grow and you can build with it, and I would not recommend starting with a fixer house. And again, I'm not saying that you should never try to get into fixing houses or flipping them. Like, I'm not saying that at all. If that's something that you're interested in, I think that's awesome. I've also been interested in it. And all I'm saying is that as a beginner, I wouldn't recommend doing it. As a beginner, I would recommend starting small and then growing. Number 10 is, don't wait for your dream house or the perfect rental property to start. And this is kind of like the earlier one that I said, don't wait for things to be perfect, and don't wait for the perfect house either. Whether you're looking for your dream house or you're looking for the perfect rental property, either way, you don't want to be waiting for those things for the first one, because like I said before, you need to get in the game as soon as possible, as soon as your finances are ready. That will give you a leg up to be able to grow from there with time and with equity. So real estate is really a long-term play, but the majority of people are never going to be able to afford their dream house or their forever home or their ultimate rental property if they don't get started with something smaller first. And so that's because of the edge that building equity gives you. The thing is that historically the housing market goes up. It goes up faster than your money goes up. But if you start with a smaller house and allow it to build equity, it's going to really help you. So whatever you can safely and comfortably afford in your budget is what you should get started with as soon as possible, in my opinion. And that's because that equity is going to start building for you, and within a few years you're going to be able to turn it around and sell it and upgrade to something bigger. Maybe you'll be ready to get your dream house by then, within only a couple of years. But on the flip side, if you wait around and for those same few years, instead of buying your starter house now, you wait for your dream house, your money's not going to be building equity. Just don't underestimate the power of equity, because it can be very, very much a game changer. So if you can afford to buy a small house and start, do. But the one caveat to that, which I forgot to mention until right now, is that you don't want to buy a mobile home, even though they can be smaller and cheaper. That's not a good investment. It's not going to grow with the same kind of equity. Don't do that. So a small, normal house. So I do want to add one last caveat on this section, and that is that obviously the market does fluctuate. So that's why it's very important to buy something that's safe and comfortable in your budget. You need to be able to comfortably hold your real estate until the time is right. And so that's why I stress so much earlier about not going above your price range. So the house could go down in value at some point, so you don't want it to be like stressing your budget to where if something went wrong, you were forced to sell it and then it was a bad time, so you go to foreclosure or something. Like, that's not what you want to do. That's another reason why you don't want to buy, a dream house when it's going to make your budget tight. So I had 10 originally, and then I realized that this one was really important, so I went ahead and added number 11, which is going to be do get your finances in order before you try to buy a house. And it's so obvious, but yet it's another one of those things that really tempts people. And so we need to be careful about this, because it's another area where you're adding risk to your real estate experience. And if you don't have your finances in order, then you're going to be a lot more at risk to fail. And we want to avoid that, but what you need to do is you need to develop a budget so that you're aware of where your money is going and so that you can take control of it. You want to set aside an emergency fund that's totally separate from your down payment. You want to be able to set aside a certain amount of money for home repairs every single month, part of your budget moving forward, because home repairs are always going to be a part of your life as a homeowner. But you also want to have a healthy emergency fund in place before you even buy. That's going to set you up for success so that you're ready for the unexpected, because you can always expect the unexpected to happen. You also want to get your credit score up. This is going to help you with a better mortgage interest rate, afford more house for less. So you want to get your credit score up, but you also want to not rely on debt. You don't want to be reliant on your credit cards or your student loans even, or whatever credit or debt that you are accustomed to. You want to use it to your advantage, not let it use you. If you're in a bunch of debt, that could put you at a higher risk for failure with your real estate. So you want to be careful of that. I do want to let you know that I'm going to be going into more detail on these topics in the near future. So if you're interested in that, please do consider subscribing and let me know what specifically you want to hear. I just really feel like these things are super important, and I don't want people to end up getting into real estate and then just really regretting it and having a really hard time with it. So that's why these were super important things that I wanted to go over, but we are not going to do the step-by-step portion today. I'm going to split the video up into two because it's getting so long. I'm going to be posting that probably within the next few weeks. Guys, that's going to do it for today. So I really hope this was helpful, and please let me know in the comments if you have any questions about these things or anything related that you want me to continue in this series, or maybe even in part 2. And if you made it to the end of this video, I'm just so honored that you take your time to be with me, and I really hope that this was helpful for you. So until next time, guys, please just remember that you are loved, you are not alone, and you've got this. Okay.